Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 41. Probably our last show of the year. We'll see how things work out, but yeah, the UFC have finally heeded our advice and are taking a break. So this will probably be our last show of the year, and we've got UFC 256 to recap, which I think we can fairly say lived up to the expectations we sort of hoped. And then we've got Thompson versus Jeff Neal, the final fight card of the year, which again is a very solid fight card to end the year. Obviously back with Jack. Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. They've done well here. Last show of the year, and they've left us with actually something good to both look forward to and look back on. So grateful for that.
I mean, I guess we'll just jump straight into it. UFC 256. We may as well start our way at the top. We were ranting and raving about it before we came on, but we'll continue in that vein. Deiveson, Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno, a majority draw, 48-46, and 2 47-47s owing to the deduction. I mean, we said before, this is a top 3 fight of the year, an absolute back and forth banger.
Yeah, it was all out, basically instant classic. Just absolute bang. I was watching this barely able to contain myself, jumping up at 6 a.m, whenever it was, but it was a brilliant fight. What did you think? How did you think kind of both Moreno and Figueiredo looked in it?
I mean, I think the first takeaway is, Jesus Christ, Moreno has got a chin on him. That is a tough dude. You know, I think essentially, what I said was, I think Figueiredo was going to be just too powerful and too strong. And I think he had. I think some of those shots that we saw Moreno take, even if they were just, in their singularity, could probably have knocked most of the other flyweights out, or at least troubled them. And certainly, in their accumulation, would have slowed down or should have slowed down anyone. But Moreno, to his credit, took the best that Figueiredo could produce and just kept moving. I thought his boxing was really good. Perhaps we joked about the Joe Rogan commentary, perhaps not as amazing and competitive at all times as Rogan was sort of suggesting, but a lot better than I thought. Obviously, he went to the takedown well, which I think we both said he would. But yeah, a cracking fight, and he certainly. I don't think it's a case of Figueiredo's level dropping. I think he looked as good as he has done. His stamina certainly lasted, and that was a concern. But Moreno just brought his absolute A+ game and just put on a hell of a fight back against Figueiredo.
Yeah, I think it was on the kind of subject of the scoring, having watched it back kind of less kind of excited than in the moment, do think that Figueiredo won. I think he won 4 rounds, every round apart from round 4, I thought were Figueiredo's. But it was, even in kind of what I deemed to be a losing effort, a very valiant performance from Brandon Moreno. It was somewhat inspiring. Fighting back against this absolute machine was truly brilliant. But yeah, I thought on his boxing, I did think it looked quite improved. He'd played a lot of it was his lead hand, he was hooking to the body, then to the head. He did that quite well when Figueiredo tried to press forward, and he used that to kind of exit exchanges and get himself off the fence as well. I thought he did that very well. So he mixing up to the body and then circling out, and then also kicking after his punches. Although there was a funny moment, I think it happened in the first or second round. Moreno completely whiffs on a high kick. Basically, Joe Rogan goes mental about the high kick, and then Figueiredo lands one that wobbles Moreno, and Joe Rogan says nothing. And I'm like,
yeah, I think most of Joe Rogan, and I think was it DC in there with him? I think DC made some good points on previous points, but essentially their commentary was just again, which is them going, oh, this is crazy. It's like, come on, guys, can we get a bit more than that, please?
I can take that if they were doing that, like if they started doing that in round 4, I would understand it. But it was like from the get-go, and it was like an unbelievable level of hype and belief in Moreno that, like, at the start of the fight was maybe somewhat unwarranted when he was just kind of getting beat up. But it was, it wasn't great commentary, but it was a fantastic fight. So warranted some of the kind of crazy reactions from Rogan.
I think, assuming that everything goes well in terms of health-wise, and if Figueiredo doesn't decide to jump up to 135, you assume the next fight probably in about 6 months' time. I think they both need a break, but it's got to be to run this back, and that's an exciting prospect. I mean, it does. I've seen some people say, Moreno comes into this with added confidence, knowing that he can take Figueiredo's best shots and move forward, and perhaps he can be more aggressive. But also, you've got to, if you're Figueiredo, you know that. And I think the 1 point deduction was fair, but if he just avoids doing that,
one of genuinely the most sickening and worst low blows I've ever seen. It was awful.
I'm really glad actually that I do think I want to give was it Jason Herzog?
It was Jason Herzog, yeah, I think it was.
I think a lot of people in a title fight would have said, first warning. Which, to be fair, he got a first warning for an eye poke, and I think a lot of people would have said, "Oh, they're different things," or you don't want a ref wouldn't want to insert themselves in. But I think that was definitely the right call. And
I think it was brutal.
Sometimes, we obviously talk about refs, intervening too early in a stoppage or whatever. But I think it's good to see a ref be assertive in that scenario, because I think that was certainly warranted.
Yeah, I think probably the right call. Moreno looked like he was going to throw up during that fight.
Yeah, it was actually gagging.
So it was you've got to imagine it had quite a significant effect on him going forward. So I think that was probably the right call. And I had obviously meant it ended up with a weird scorecard with the kind of with the draw, but that's not bad. We get to see them run it back. I can see the point of Moreno taking more confidence from this, and he certainly did his best work, I think, when he was able to actually press forward against Figueiredo. So if he can do that more consistently, I think he stands a better chance. But I don't necessarily know if he couldn't press forward more because of necessarily I think that there were quite a few kind of quite long exchanges, prolonged exchanges in this fight, which is what makes it so exciting. But to me, it was mostly Figueiredo getting the better of them, and Moreno was then forced to retreat because he had lost the exchange, and he got dinged by one of the hardest hitters, or the hardest hitter at 125. So I don't know. It could play a factor, but also another thing to possibly consider is that Moreno could take the punches this time, but he took a lot of damage. How much? I don't know. You could say it might take something out of him. You don't necessarily know that. I wouldn't be surprised if in the rematch Moreno couldn't take the shots. But also there's not necessarily that much reason to believe he can't. It's just something to bear in mind rather than kind of make a solid prediction based on that. So you don't know. But when they run it back, I imagine it'll be a cracker again, hopefully. So
it's really been a good few months for flyweights. We talked about Royval, Kaikar France, that was a cracker. Moreno, Royval, that was a good one. I think Figueiredo, as much as he's been a dominant champion, I think he has also brought a lot of that interest back. hopefully, hopefully he can stay around for a couple more. And then also in his absence, I think we've got to assume he'll move up to bantamweight at some point. Then they can keep it around because, I mean, there's just so many great fighters, and flyweights are just always great fights.
Yeah, they are. On the kind of subject of him moving up to bantamweight, from this, I saw that Figueiredo he really does bite on stuff that you give him because he is really just trying to knock your head off at all times. So I think someone that is really good with the feints and someone that can push him back consistently will give him quite a lot of trouble. And that sounds almost the exact description of Petr Yan. So I don't know if moving up to bantamweight is necessarily the best move for him. I think that I'd like him to do it because I think it'd be an amazing fight. But I think that Yan probably late on would really get to him and start to beat him up. But it would be a fantastic fight for
we'll see. Obviously, you've got this one running back if he's to win that. See what Cody Garbrandt's doing, but
I think he'd absolutely dead Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah, I hope he would, but I think his move to bantamweight will probably become more out of necessity than I mean, he had those 2 days in hospital. I don't think it was confirmed what the reason was, but I think you've got to assume, and I think in fact his manager said he had a bad reaction to something after he was rehydrating. So I think whether or not it was directly linked into the weight cut, I think that's something he probably realizes he can't do for probably more than another, but 3 or 4 fights probably.
Yeah, I think it is
still going to be big in itself.
Yeah, it is. It's something that he certainly needs to kind of prepare for. But yeah, which is a bit sad because flyweight's just kind of building momentum with him again. It's getting going. So it'd be nice for him if he could stick around, but it's just probably not possible, really.
Yeah. We'll move on. Co-main event: Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson, 30-26, all around the board. I mean, before we get to the obvious discussion around Ferguson, and I think sometimes reminds me of when like a top Premier League team loses to a team at the bottom. A lot of the discussion is oh, how bad were the guys at the top? But I think a lot of this is fine, Ferguson didn't look himself, but also let's give credit to Charles Oliveira because not many people saw him winning, let alone putting on a display as dominant as that.
Yeah, that was so impressive from Charles Oliveira. He really kind of just went to the next gear in his game. He's always been a fantastic grappler, but the kind of main criticism of his grappling game was that it was very kind of scramble and heavily submission hunt, as opposed to what he did here, which was maintain control positions and then work at a more steady kind of pace, and just control and win the fight, and then maybe get you submissions later, as he nearly did in round 1 with the armbar. But yeah, it was certainly a significant step up from Charles Oliveira in terms of his control grappling game, and didn't do what he normally does, which if you watch him versus Anthony Pettis and Ricardo Lamas, he would so aggressively hunt submissions that his opponent would scramble out. And on the feet, he was not terrible, but just I think he looked very slow. He just doesn't really have the speed at all anymore. But Ferguson did start to do Oliveira was winning kind of the early exchanges, but Ferguson started to midway through the first round started to kind of impose his stand-up game, but then the takedowns came, and it was from there it was a completely different fight.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it was a sort of more controlled, measured aggression. They got that armbar, which, quite frankly, I don't know how he didn't tap Ferguson, and then obviously moving to the second round, it looked like he essentially couldn't use that. But even then, he was, as you said, it wasn't putting himself in unnecessary risk when it came to inflicting. I thought some of his guard passes were great, but that was very much a slow, well, not a slow, but a more measured, less risky progression into looking for some more of those submission attempts. I mean, you got on to Ferguson. Yeah, I mean, he looks slow. I think it's difficult because I think essentially he was fighting one-handed from the first round onwards.
From the end of the first round, yeah.
But even in that first round, he looked slow. He didn't pressure. I thought his best chance was getting Ferguson getting Oliveira on the back foot.
Yeah.
And he really didn't pressure, which is he did just seem slow. And coming into the fight, I didn't know how much of an emphasis to put on. We talked about how much that Gaethje fight could have taken out of him, even if it was 7 months ago. I think it's probably fair to. I think it is fair to say that he is sort of over the summit of his career.
Oh,
those sort of Cerrone, that sort of Cerrone performance was probably sort of right up at the peak, and I think he can still be a player in this division. He's only lost to Gaethje and Oliveira, who probably are two of the 4 best lightweights in the world right now, 5 best lightweights in the world. So it's obviously a shame, but he is 36, and this was always going to happen at some point. We'll see where he goes, but yeah, I think this is probably he's probably sort of exited that elite group of we always talked about that sort of 5 that someone like Poirier and Oliveira were on the outside of. I think now Oliveira he's now in there very firmly, and Ferguson is probably outside of that sort of truly elite group at 155.
Yeah, and it is sad. Like, there would have been some absolutely brilliant fights for like a prime, like still fast Tony Ferguson at lightweight. Like, could you imagine a Tony Ferguson Dustin Poirier fight, like prime Tony Ferguson versus Dan Hooker, or Tony Ferguson versus Max Holloway? Like, these are like in my mind at least, absolutely brilliant fights that we'll just never get to see, and that's quite sad. As well as obviously, kind of, I would say the Khabib fight, but I think it is fair to say after this fight, it kind of puts any kind of thoughts of Tony being a serious threat to Khabib to bed, kind of. Like, he really couldn't get anything going off his back from against Oliveira, and he didn't kind of threaten anything like when Oliveira was shooting. Although Oliveira didn't shoot that.
In a hypothetical world, if we're doing that, an Oliveira Khabib fight is such an interesting fight in my eyes. If Oliveira, if in some weird 2021, you could, Dana White can somehow coax Khabib out to fight at the end of 2021, and Oliveira can. I mean, obviously they'd want it to be against Conor, but if Oliveira can get another win against, I don't know, Gaethje, or against the winner of McGregor Poirier, I think that Oliveira Khabib fight is honestly such an interesting fight.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, after the Gaethje fight, I just don't know if I could ever confidently pick against Khabib again. Like, he impressed me so much
I certainly
with the Gaethje fight.
But it certainly would be an interesting. I think
it'd be interesting. Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting, especially early. But I think just over time, I see Khabib breaking Oliveira just as the fight goes on, and probably end up submitting him, to be honest. But I agree, it'd be a fantastic fight.
Yeah. We shall see. But yeah, I mean, Oliveira talked about stuff in the post-fight, mentioned wanting the winner of Poirier McGregor. I don't know whether he'll get that, but I mean, he is certainly
I
now.
think he should. He could.
Yeah,
he
think
certainly
he should.
could get that fight. It's an option. He probably should. Yeah.
He is now. He will probably now go in as the third ranked guy in that division in terms of in the list of things, behind the winner of McGregor Poirier and behind Gaethje. So really great for him, and yeah, I think there's plenty of fun fights for him in the future.
Yeah. No, I think I'm excited to see what he does going forward. I think it will be. Yeah. It's kind of like a coming of age finally. Like, he is ready for his championship run. Kind of after a decade in the UFC, he's there. He's like at his peak now. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. I'm excited for Charles Oliveira going forward. He's a fantastic fighter.
Mackenzie Dern, Jandiroba was next, and we didn't preview this because it wasn't on the main card. I didn't watch too much of it, but from what I can gather from you, it was an improved, even if it wasn't a perfect stand-up performance from Mackenzie Dern, and she looks to be progressing well.
Yeah, it was like, I just kind of like described this fight to you as like wild, but like it was fun. But it was like obviously not like the best technical kind of striking there is. But I did say Dern looked much improved from kind of like what I remember of her striking. She was working behind a jab a bit more. She was like slipping return right hands, and just generally a bit wild on the feet, but got good ideas at least. And Perillo has done, I think, very good work with her. It was her first full camp under Perillo, and you can really see the improvements after a small, like such a short space of time. And she even she had to deal with quite a bit of adversity. Like, she got quite a nasty nose break in the fight, and fought through it and won the round after she broke her nose. So yeah, it was good, good fun from Dern, and actually kind of more than really any of her other fights makes me kind of more interested in her as a prospect than I kind of ever have been before. So yeah, I can see maybe at the end of next year she could be like top 5-ish, maybe something around that area. And yeah, who knows? I think she's probably good, because her only loss in the UFC is to Amanda Hebas, who is I don't know exactly where she's ranked, but she's pretty much one of the top in the division. So yeah, it's actually quite exciting times for Mackenzie Dern. Can see where she goes.
Good stuff. Kevin Holland, Jacare is up next. I mean, probably the most
meme of a knockout is all I can say.
Talking to his opponent on the back, being like, "Ow, what would he say? Like, I expected to be here." Jacare laughs, and then he just clocks in with a big right hook. Leans.
He said something.
Realizes that Jacare is sort of slightly out of it, and just batters him to within an inch of his life. I mean,
yeah,
not Jacare's finest hour.
No, I think based on the performances, we'll get to JDS in a second. But from this card, Tony Ferguson, Jacare, and JDS are fairly shot. They are, all three of them are far past their best, I think. But yeah, Kevin Holland actually he really surprised Jacare with the elbows from his back when Jacare got the first takedown. Jacare was not comfortable with that. And Kevin Holland managed to stay kind of wriggly and wiry enough to kind of get something going on the ground in that regard. And then just the knockout was very strange. He actually on a rewatch, he hits Jacare first, one time from his back, really hurts him. You see Jacare really shell up when he's sitting in the guard. And then Holland hits him again with a back fist, and then he kicks him off. And you see that when Holland has his feet on the hips and kicks Jacare off, it's Jacare's so wobbly. And then he lands the kind of one that's like a breakdancing move that got most of the highlights. So he hurt him like from his back, like with at least 2 big punches, and it's like it was crazy. Very fun, strange Kevin Holland knockout, but doesn't really tell us much, really, or too much about Kevin Holland because he did.
It is annoying. It's like I sort of said, finally we've got a fight where we can gauge Kevin Holland. Jacare's an elder statesman, but very much a respected, skillful guy in the middleweight division. If Holland looks good, then we can say, there's something here. And it's like he's got the win, and he's got power, but we already knew that coming in. I mean, Jacare did get the takedown with quite a bit of ease, but then it is Jacare, so that's nothing to necessarily negative for Kevin Holland about. But yeah, we still don't really know a whole lot.
That's the thing. It's like he did well, and like he knocked Jacare out from his back, but like still ended up with Jacare on top of you, which just kind of ignoring kind of what actually happened kind of in the fight, like from a conceptual outside game planning point of view, he ended up in essentially the worst position he could very early on. So
yeah.
Although it's like quite crazy and exciting that he managed to get that knockout, from a kind of tactical point of view, it's really not very good that happened. So I don't know. It is a strange one, but yeah, Kevin Holland. That kind of just sums up Kevin Holland, really. Bit of just a unique individual.
Yeah, and a very annoying one, I'd be pressed to say.
I don't know. It's somewhat. I quite like him, to be fair. I don't mind
it. Wholly annoying. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, if we're continuing down the road of individuals who perhaps are past their best, I think we've sort of progressed from Ferguson to Jacare to JDS, who in the Oliveira Ferguson one, I said let's give credit to Oliveira first because he looked good, but in this one I thought Dan looked okay, but I mean JDS just got nothing going, and the way he just wilted after that jab was just it was verging on hard to watch, really.
Yeah, I kind of really agree with you on that. Like JDS looked terrible, but the way that kind of Garner's style worked in this fight kind of made it harder than it necessarily should have been, which kind of means that I'm not too impressed with Gan at the minute.
The game. I mean, I don't know what the game plan was, but he stayed in southpaw, and Jacare, not Jacare, JDS just didn't really make any effort to try and get inside, and Gan just sort of said, "Okay, I'll just pepper you with kicks then for the first."
Yeah, it was
round.
A very back foot outside kicking game that he chose to play, which I feel that if you've got a fight against JDS coming up, and the entirety of your fight camp wasn't spent effectively pressuring and learning how to make that and work that, then I don't know what your camp was for, really.
Yeah.
Because it's just such an
obviously more of a sort of a composed, perhaps not so aggressive fighter, but this was the opponent and the fight to bring that into your game because it's going to be successful. I mean, he ultimately was, but that's one way you can really work on your pressure game, because we've seen JDS wilt on many an occasion, but
because you get it for free basically as well. But yeah, kind of the inability to fight against type is a bit of a weakness, because you're not always going to get favorable style matchups where your style will work, and you will have to adapt and fight against your favorite style matchup sometimes if you're going to be kind of highly successful at the top tier of the sport. And kind of the fact that he wasn't able to do that is a bit of a kind of maybe red flag would be a bit too strong, but something approaching that. So yeah, just still like reasonably excited about Gan, but kind of cautiously.
In his defence, I will say, because we both have been a bit critical, but he did make his MMA debut in August 2018, and this is only his seventh fight.
Yeah.
So
that is true.
There's stuff to work on, but he's young and pretty inexperienced. This is only his third fight in the UFC. I want to say maybe his fourth.
I think probably his fourth.
So there's stuff to work on certainly, but as a raw talent, I think there's plenty there. But it's going to be interesting in his next fight, 'cause I think he's ranked 7th. A lot of the guys in and around those rankings are going to be a real step up for him, because as much as JDS carries name value and he carried a ranking, this is not the same.
A chin. He doesn't carry.
He didn't carry a significant threat in the same way that the guys he's now surrounded by will.
Yeah, JDS should retire. He looked absolutely dreadful.
I think that's definitely true. I mean, that's 4 knockouts in a row?
Yeah, I think so. 4. Quite a few of them are decently bad as well. But he just got no offense going at all. I can't really remember him landing anything significant.
I'll have a look. We'll move on to the last. Well, Perceived Moicano was the last one we sort of previewed. We said it was going to be a good fight. It did deliver, and Perceived put on. And here we go. 10 strikes landed for JDS. And
not great.
Not great. But getting back to Perceived Moicano. I mean, Perceived was looking sharp, looking good. Good knockout, crazy combo, and onwards and upwards, really.
No, I thought Moicano, this was another one where Joe Rogan was pretty bad in the commentary. He was talking as if Moicano has been gone to 3 kickboxing classes or something. Isn't Renato Moicano. Moicano had decent success on the feet. His jab got going a little bit, kind of maybe a couple of minutes in. Fiziev started strong, and then Moicano got his jab going a little bit. The right hand started connecting once he started landing it to the body, and once he started landing the right hand to the body, he could then bring it back upstairs, and it landed effectively. And I remember, I think it was off a clinch break. He really caught Fiziev fairly heavy. I wouldn't Moicano looked fairly good. So I don't underplay Moicano. It was just that Fiziev is, first of all, very powerful. His kicks look brutal. He was just chopping down Moicano's legs. And then he's so fast, it's ridiculous. The way he can chain kicks together, he'll go body head like it's nothing with kicks, is insane. High above kind of any other kicker in MMA in that regard.
Generally that sort of finishing combination in it. I think it might have been 2 kicks, a right hook, and then a left straight or something. The speed to throw all those different kicks and then punches all in different places within the amount of time that he did was honestly just I was just in awe of it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and then even before his jab was working well also, and then what started the combination that ended up finishing Moicano was he led with the left hook to the body, which he did quite a number of times before the knockout, and that works by kind of establishing his jab as a threat, establishing other things, and then and his lead hook just generally as a threat, and then he can work it to the body, and he comboed off of that fantastically. He looks such a good fighter. Very excited to see him going forward. Him against some of the top strikers at lightweight would be brilliant. Him versus, I know, I mean, maybe it's a bit premature now, but him versus Gaethje would be fantastic. Him versus Brad Riddell, I think, would be brilliant. some like
I think
those
Riddell
fights
actually,
there.
I think Riddell actually had a fight booked a bit off topic, and I think it was one that I'm quite interested. Who was it? Who did Riddell have
I
one?
think it was Gregor Gillespie was what I heard.
That's how it was. That's an interesting one, but yeah.
Which is an interesting one. I can just like, if it stays, it's one of those. It's like if it stays on the feet, Riddell should win fairly comfortably. But I would probably see like, it's kind of easy to forget how dominant a wrestler Gillespie was for a long time, because he hadn't fought in a while and he got quite brutally knocked out. But he was such a dominant wrestler, Gillespie was. So yeah, we'll have to see about that one, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, unless you had anything else, any other fights you wanted to mention, we can.
I can't actually remember that much of it, but I remember watching the Swanson Pineda one and thinking, that was a good little scrap. That was. And Cub Swanson got a nice knockout. But yeah, I can't remember specifics at the minute. But no, that was a good fight. So watch that one again. I might do that. But yeah, good fun. But that was all. I actually didn't watch any of the other fights. We at least mentioned all the fights that I watched from this card.
Yeah, I mean, it was good stuff.
I know you said Chase Hooper looked bad, but I haven't watched that.
He was on the early prelims, and I think we talked a while back saying that he needed to improve on his boxing, and it's like they keep saying he is, but I'm yet to see any evidence because I don't know who Peter Barrett was, but I imagine he was probably brought in for Chase Hooper and was essentially piecing him up prior to the third round submission. So it's like the same thing with him until he invests in at least something that is dangerous, then he's not. I can't see him. I can see him very much getting stuck by the sort of Caceres level again, because his boxing is essentially, watch me throw these vague hands at you and hope you get distracted so I can grab a single leg. It's like, that's great, but when you reach further up, people are just gonna read that, and there's got to be an element of it. It doesn't even have to be technical. He just needs to be able to throw a shot with some power, just something, so that guys he's facing are just not like, well, I can just stand here and take these shots because they're easy to dodge. If he can at least throw something with like power, then at least there's something that his opposition's got sort of in the back of their mind. But
yeah, I mean, he doesn't look like a powerful guy, really, does he?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a long way to go for him, but I certainly didn't see any.
I think he's just
improvements.
He's just a bit inexperienced. He's just, I don't think he's ready from what I've seen to be in the UFC.
A solid card, really delivered. And with sort of that in mind, we can move over to this week. There's quite a few going on. We'll start, I think, what we said before, with Marlon Moraes versus Rob Font at bantamweight, and that's sort of. There's a couple of. I think Gillian Robertson was supposed to have a different opponent, but I think that got cancelled. And Marcin Tybura versus Greg Hardy is not one I'm particularly interested in. Yeah. But Moraes Font should be an interesting one. Moraes with a pretty speedy turnaround. He fought in October, with that first early second round loss to Sandhagen. Comes up against Rob Font, who's not fought in more than a year now. Is this just a good fight for Moraes, sort of get back to winning ways?
You'd think so. Like, it is a challenge. I mean, like, on the subject of kind of like Rob Font's inactivity, it does kind of lead me to somewhat forget about him and maybe kind of the challenges that he may pose to Moraes. But from what I remember, he is he's a solid kind of just kind of like a solid guy that will be a good test for Moraes, like just to see if he's still kind of at that elite level. And if Moraes is still there, then he should have this fairly somewhat comfortably. And if he's not, then Rob Font gets a chance at a big win. So yeah, it'd be just kind of a good fight. I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I don't really have too much else to say. I mean, I think Moraes in those early rounds is dangerous, especially against he's dangerous against anyone, especially against the guy who's not been in there for more than 12 months. So I could see this one perhaps being finished quite early if Moraes is on it, but we'll see. One that could also be finished very early is the fight after that. Mikel Pereira versus Chaos. What I've just realized, Chaos the Ox Fighter Williams, which is a cracking name. Who has had combined under a minute in the octagon in his 2 victories, 27 seconds against Alex Moreno, 30 seconds against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Comes up against a Mikel Pereira who I'm have to begrudgingly admit looked good against Imardiev in his last fight. Looked focused.
Yeah,
actually looked like someone who
certainly
could be quite good if he took it seriously.
Yeah. So yeah, a less annoying Mikel Pereira, certainly. But yeah, like I don't know. This will just kind of be a bit of a. I can still see this being a bit of a just wild, kind of sloppy, but kind of exciting fight. Would be my prediction for this one. I really don't know much about Chaos Williams because there isn't that much.
I mean, I've seen literally a minute of him.
So he hits hard. Can you say that?
Hashtag analysis.
Yeah. But yeah, just,
well, I think this is certainly one to preview more than to preview more than review more than preview.
Review more than preview.
But we'll see. Co-main Jose Aldo versus Marlon Vera. Aldo, for how for level he's looked in so far in this sort of bantamweight run, is still yet to get a victory.
Yeah.
Split decision against Marlon Moraes, which I think he was unlucky. Obviously finished late against Petr Yan, but looked really good for the sort of first 3.5 rounds. Against Marlon Vera, he's sort of been around for a while, since 2014, but has put on a good run of late, and obviously finished off Sean O'Malley in his last fight. I mean, I think given how good Aldo's looked, I'd be even with those 2 losses. I think he is. He could be a bit too good for a Marlon Vera that I think could be a bit too ploddy and there to be hit.
Yeah, probably. I think that especially against a tall opponent, I can really see Aldo ripping combos to the body and then to the head. That could be a big feature I see in this fight. And then what could do? I could see like Chito Marlon Vera could, like, he likes to kind of play like pepper his opponent with leg kicks from the outside, but in his at his peak, Jose Aldo was like very difficult to really get much kicking offense going on. And although Yan had some success with it recently, even given how good Aldo looked in that fight, so he could do something with that. But I just see that even at this stage in Aldo's career, kind of significantly past his peak, I see him probably being just a bit too much for Chito Vera. After all, it is still Jose Aldo, and he's still one of the best of all time. So, and he's the kind of athlete that he was always kind of like he could fatigue, but like he's still very fast and he's still very explosive. So, especially
across a 3-round fight.
Yeah. So yeah, he has to worry about that even less. So, I just see that Jose Aldo probably just kind of puts a bit of a 3-round beating on him. Maybe probably late. Chito Vera is very tough, so I see him being able to survive. And the 3rd round could be dicey for Aldo. Probably end up with a really scrappy 3rd round. Be real good fun. but I see probably the first 2 rounds, Aldo jabbing him up, ripping his body, and just Cheeto not really being able to get much going. He won't. We saw how much trouble Jan had in pressuring Aldo, and Jan's a much better pressure fighter than Vera is. So I just don't see Vera being able to really push Aldo backwards much. And yeah, to see it being a bit of a fun Jose Aldo performance, to be honest. I'm quite excited for it. See Jose Aldo kind of style on him, at least for the first 2 rounds.
We'll move then to the main event. Was supposed to be the co-main, but Chimaev Edwards got cancelled. Wonderboy Thompson versus Neal. Thompson coming off that really good performance against Vincenzo Luque.
Even though that was quite a while ago. That was over a year ago now.
That was 13 months ago. And Jeff Neal coming essentially a year. He had that. Who was he supposed to? He was supposed to fight Neil Magny, but had that sort of health scare. But his last fight was against Mike Perry in December 2019. Big guy. Obviously got that left straight, good kicks. I mean, in his fights, he has been a guy that sort of sits back and counters a bit more. I wonder how that'll play against a guy like Wonderboy Thompson, who you think is not going to be pressing the action.
Yeah. We've seen, in quite a few fights, Wonderboy is more than happy to have a boring fight, let's be honest, with you.
Chill, Wonderboy.
If it kind of means getting the fight that he wants. So yeah, I see that Jeff Neal is probably going to have to. I mean, unless we could just get a real boring fight. I'm kind of de-hyping myself for this one right now, to be honest.
Yeah,
unless
that sentence, I was like, this actually could be a stinker.
It's got the potential to be a stinker. It could still be a good fight. I don't think, because in the kind of Till Wonderboy fight, you have one kind of. I'd categorize Darren Till as someone that is capable of getting a boring fight out of anyone. Is kind of how I view Till's kind of recent fights since Cerrone, to be honest. The way he fights, it's weird. It's a mixture of his style, but also him being good. So that even against Whittaker, that was not a great fight. And his kind of mix of being able to threaten with the counters, but also very low activity and non-committance. Committance, is that a word? But yeah, Till can drag that out of anyone. Whereas I don't think Neal quite does that. So I see it being more interesting than the Till Wonderboy fight. But I see the potential for it to be bad. And in that, I probably view a kind of boring, maybe... difficult to say who would win. Maybe a boring Wonderboy victory.
I think I'd be hard pressed if it does go that route. I'd be hard pressed to see Jeff Neal managing to sort of squeak his way to a boring decision. I think if Jeff Neal can't sort of draw the fight out of Wonderboy, I think it probably will be quite difficult, and you could see a sort of a point scoring Wonderboy victory. I mean, obviously you saw what happened against Vincenzo Luque, in that if you go in recklessly against Wonderboy, then you just get pieced up.
It wasn't even necessarily recklessly. Luque is a very good pressure fighter and pressured fairly smartly. It was just Wonderboy. Wonderboy's just so good at kind of that back foot counter style. Luque kind of perhaps probably could have used his leg kicks better, and kind of finishing combinations with kicks more probably would have served Luque better in that fight, which he didn't do that much. So yeah, there were but Wonderboy had a good performance. So yeah, I just don't see that. I think that Jeff Neal is maybe a slightly better counter fighter or counter puncher than Darren Till, but he's probably not as good necessarily at like cutting off the cage as Till, which is probably what he'll be doing more of against Wonderboy. So yeah, it is a difficult one to predict because you also don't necessarily know. Like Wonderboy is like 37 now; he's a fair way past his peak. So we don't know how he'll necessarily look. He looked good against Luke, but it's been another year since then, so we'll have to see how Wonderboy looks. But yeah, we'll see. I think a peak Wonderboy probably would cinch this, but maybe he's declined enough to give Neal his openings.
Yeah, I think what you'll also learn is, obviously it depends on how long it goes, but this is certainly a big step up for Jeff Neal, and will hopefully give us a sense of where he is sort of in the division in terms of a tactical sense, because this is a fight that he's certainly going to have to be tactically and technically efficient in a sense that fights he'd relied on his sort of sheer power, strength, and that sort of counter-punching ability to get him through. Larger extent, like this one is going to be one that he's going to have to game plan well for, and I think that put in this division.
Yeah, it'd be if he can win this, and if he can look him, it'll be very good for him going forward.
Time for today. Obviously, there are other fights, and if anything sticks out when it happens, then we'll talk about it perhaps at some point. Yeah, that's about all we've got. Obviously, we'll probably be having a week off next week because it's Christmas, but we might be back either the week after or perhaps the week after that to maybe talk about some action from this card, but perhaps to review a year that sort of didn't think we'd get as much as we have, which has been probably not a good thing. We probably shouldn't have had as many fights as we had. We should have taken this thing more seriously. This is Dana White. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and yeah, we did get some real good fights out of it along the way, so can't complain too much because we did enjoy it.
To review all of that, but yeah, in the meantime, safe everyone. A good Christmas and or good holidays, and we'll see you soon.
See ya.